everybody, and welcome to the Maurice Brown Comedy Show on Bog Radio. Good morning, everyone. We have a very special guest on the show this morning. Also want to shout out RadioQDX.com in Lucama, North Carolina, and KCHF-TV in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Our guest this morning is a comedian who's been seen on NBC's Last Comic Standing, The Late Late Show with Craig Ferguson, and he's got his own Drybar comedy special. You can currently catch him at the Gotham Comedy Live and Comedy All-Stars on PUREFLIX as well. Ladies and gentlemen, with no further ado, please welcome the very funny and talented Drew Thomas. What's up, Drew?
Hey, what's going on? Thanks for having me. Wow, that was a great intro. You
Hey.
did research. I appreciate that.
You got to do your research, man. I only want, the top people on my show, man, and you are definitely one of those. Drew Thomas, very funny. And you came here, Drew, from Jamaica, which I did not mention in the open. And, you came here at 9 years old, and, you're trying to figure out the culture, I'm sure. And all of a sudden, you start becoming very humorous to people. I'm guessing you used comedy as a defense mechanism, and then all of a sudden it just kind of grew from there.
Correct.
Yeah.
I grew up in the Bronx, so we had snap-in. Other people call it the dozens, or it's regional wherever you're from. But in New York it was snapping. So everybody's snapping on you. I'm like, first of all, why are you snapping on me? You don't even know me. We just met, so you got to learn that and learn how to keep people up off of you. So it became a defense mechanism at first, definitely.
Well, black folk, man, we love to go on each other, bro. You know how it is.
Yeah.
I mean, I lived in Washington, D.C. for about 27 years. They call it joning in D.C. Joning, snapping. I grew up in North Carolina. We called it back there. We call it scoing. So, I mean, everybody's got their own, adjective for that. But no, in the black community, you better be quick.
Yes.
You better be quick, or you're going down.
You're going down.
You go, hey, yo, Drew, and you gonna stay down, dude. So you gotta figure that out pretty quickly. And you going to the Bronx, I imagine that was something that was kind of, well, just tell us what that experience was like when you.
First of all, I came in January, so
okay,
January 9th, 1981. So it was winter. So you coming from the Caribbean, it's 82 degrees every day, and now you getting met at the airport with a winter coat. It's snowing on the ground. You never walked on ice before. So just taking in the environment is a huge change. Before you even get to school and start the adjustment with, you sound different from everybody else, different accent.
Yeah.
You don't have all the fresh clothes yet. You just got here. We came with 2 suitcases. So I didn't have no Lees and Sergio's and all the Tiga and the all the clothes everybody else was wearing.
Yeah,
hand-me-downs from the church.
Absolutely. And coming from Jamaica, I mean, great weather all the time, I would imagine, and then all of a sudden here you are in New York in January. I mean, you talk about a wake-up call.
Right. Now you need long johns. What's long johns? I don't even know what that is.
Well, dude, you adapt it well. You're very funny, without question. You're a name I gotta believe that's going to be out there very, very soon in the near future, because you've definitely got comedy skills. You got the timing, you got the pacing, you set up your punchlines very well. I think the biggest obstacle for a lot of comedians that are trying to figure out their voice is to figure out your pace. Your pacing, setting up that punchline. And, everybody's got different ways of doing it. You know what I mean? But you found your pace and it's perfect.
You got to do it on stage. People go, how do I figure that out? Where do I? And I didn't know that when I started, that was going to be my style or that was going to be my pace. But
yeah,
it's pretty close to my normal speaking cadence anyway.
Yeah.
And I just took the few little jokes I had to the stage and said, okay, well, tell these jokes and figure it out. And over time, you add time to your set and you figure out your style. This is my style, but you can't skip being on stage. I mean, that's
No.
you're not gonna figure out your style in the car or with your friends. You might have something an idea in your head, and once you get to the stage, it just comes out a different way naturally. So you get to the stage, take it to the stage.
You've got to take it to the stage, and I think one of the things that puts you ahead of the game as far as people that are trying to break through, you figured out the most, in my opinion anyway, probably the most important part for a stand-up comedian is to have timing. Your timing is impeccable. And once you've nailed that part of it, then it's just a matter of, whatever the jokes that you come up with, whatever you think is funny, you can put it in that box.
Right.
Because you figured that part out. That's it. To me, it is huge for a comedian to figure that part out. And it's not easy because you have your voice. First of all, you got to be true to yourself.
It was one of the reasons that probably delayed me even starting, because I knew that to do this, you have to be true to yourself. You have to strip yourself down to the core and build yourself back up. So if you're anything other than true out there, people can tell.
They can tell, and I think that once you've done that, because it's one thing to be funny. You're talking about you're being yourself, and I think you're naturally funny. You learn how to snap back and everything, but it's one thing to be good at that. It's a whole other thing to be good at that on stage, because the stage is completely different from being at a dinner party, being in the locker room, being on a corner with the fellas. Right. That's not what stand-up is.
Exactly.
You feel what I'm saying?
And so I was that guy. I was the guy funny at the cookout, funny at the barbershop for years, but I knew that, okay, if I'm gonna do this stand-up, that's different from that.
Yeah.
Now I don't even joke in those places no more. It's like now you the professional, so people do some stuff at the barbershop. Now I'm a customer. Now I'm not auditioning at the barbershop. But yes, it's different from the living room. I say, some people go, my such and such should do stand up. Every time we have a get together, he's funny at the parties, and I go, oh, he's living room funny. That's different from stage funny.
It's completely different. And that's what happens to a lot of people and I think that's where hecklers come from too, because they know they can't get up there.
Right.
They can be funny at the table though. I think Anthony Anderson, who did Blackish, there was a story. Anthony Anderson, when he started out, I think he came along when Dwayne Johnson was kind of messing around with comedy and Jamie Foxx and all the young guns that were out there. That's when Anthony was coming up at popular mics in California, but he was heckling people and he wouldn't get on stage until finally someone, called him out and told him to get on stage. He got on stage and cut all the lights out and everybody started joning on him, yada, yada, yada. I mean, they humiliated him.
Right.
And he realized that, it's not a game being up there. And no. Anthony Anderson is really funny, but he had to learn the hard way. It's a completely different deal. So as I said, your timing is impeccable. And you did a Drybar comedy special, which is where I first found out about you. And I was telling you, I was just like stuck. Like, this dude is really, really good. And it's a Drybar comedy special they do out in Provo, Utah. Tell us about that experience.
That was an interesting experience. So the opportunity had came up actually a couple years prior, and I had another gig, something with my scheduling, so I wasn't able to do it. So I kind of had gave up on the whole opportunity of doing one, but I know that they come out all the time and they got a huge platform. So the opportunity came up again, mutually. I don't know if I reached out, Drybar reached out, but we was like, let's do it. And we were able to put the date together. So we went over the set and they were, it's for the Mormons. So, material, this and that. We could do this material, not that material. So I said, okay, I have enough material. I work clean anyway in other environments. I do corporate gigs, cruise ships. So no problem. So put it together, flew out there. I was able to run the set the night before at Wise Guys Comedy Club in Utah.
Okay.
Shout out to Wise Guys. So that was good. Me and Dustin, who also recorded with me, and then they got the nice theater set up the next day, and they do 2 shows and bring in audience and 2 different audiences and edit it, and it was a great experience, man. It's been great for me because that, you know, those clips that went viral, which have led to more people seeing me than seeing me before. I've been doing this for 20 years, and there's some people just seeing me for the first time. So I'm grateful. Can't even be mad.
Well, you deserve a shot. You're very good, as I said, and I'm going to give our audience an opportunity to get a little sample size of Drew Thomas. Drew Thomas on the Maurice Brown Comedy Show. You're listening to bogradio.fm. Ladies and gentlemen, check him out doing his thing, Drybar Comedy Special in Provo, Utah. Here's Drew Thomas.
And I'll share with you what scares me the most. What scares me the most about marriage is the fact that men and women don't even look at marriage the same way. When women talk about marriage, it's a happy occasion. I'm getting married. I got my ring. I got my colors picked out. I got 4 of my fat friends to stand next to me. It's gonna be a beautiful day. No, their dress is ugly. Mine is pretty. But it's not the same for the men. When men talk about marriage with our friends, it sounds like something you get diagnosed with. Did you hear what happened to Charles? No, what? He's getting married. No! I just seen him last week. When did he find out? She told him yesterday at dinner. Is there anything that we could do for him? No, the invitations already went out. There's nothing we can do.
Hey, Drew, I love it, dude. I love it. And you've got like a whole lot more material on dating and getting married. I wanted to get some more in there, but that was a good take right there. And that's how dudes are. Dudes are just like that.
Exactly. It's like, you know, it's the whole show is for the women, the bridal party, the shower, the dinner before. It's a big spectacle, you know. And sometimes the guy is just like, he's just going to the event.
Well, you know, I look at it like this. Guys are you know, they want to stay single in a way. They want to kind of do whatever they want to do, but then the other side of it is you really need somebody at the end of the day.
You do.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, you really do.
Down to even traveling. Who wants to travel alone? There's so much to see in the world. You know, so many places to go. You want to go to all of these places with a different person. You know, that would be draining.
Yeah, and so I think guys, they kind of mask their real feelings with those type of comments you're making there. You know, because still want to be a player. You still want to be that guy type. You want to feel like that. But the reality is you need somebody. They really want somebody. Every guy wants somebody to love, I mean, for the rest of their life, you know. But I love the jokes because, you know, guys we're just simple, man. We just simple. God looked down and he looked at the dude. He said, you know what? This guy going to burn my garden down if I don't get him somebody. So he had to create it. Well, thank God.
It's true though. I mean, my dad is a prime example. My dad been married 54 years and he needs her.
Yes, 100%. Now, Drew, COVID-19 hit. You said you've been doing comedy for about 20 years, which is February, that's quite a long. Wow, that's incredible. But COVID hit, and we all, as comedians, we had to sit down for at least 2 years. I mean, clubs were closed. There were no more shows. I'm doing this platform as a result of having to sit down.
See?
And it was difficult because, you know, you're in this groove and you just want to go out and perform. Now you got to stop And for me, I said, you know what? This is kind of relieving. I kind of needed to chill a little bit anyway. And then after a while, you kind of went, okay, I got to figure something out. How did you deal with that period, Drew?
Man, it was crazy. Same thing, you know, you found out you're not essential. You know, they only had space for essential workers, so comedians weren't essential. They didn't even have the computers weren't even set up any boxes for entertainers to get unemployment or any aid. There was no. Remember, it was like us and Uber drivers were left out.
Yeah. You know what, dude? That's funny as heck. One thing they did find essential was alcohol. I was like, whoa, wait a minute.
Restaurants were delivering alcohol by Uber Eats. They were
like, hold on. This is essential?
Yeah, that's essential, but we weren't essential. So I started making masks. Me and my sister started making masks at the house right in the beginning. We were selling masks, and then masks became mass duplicated, so mass business went out. Out of the business.
Yes.
And then it was really just sitting around, and I just started really observing how things changed, how people started treating each other, how people treated other groups of people. People's real feelings came out during COVID, like how they really felt about other groups of people, whether it was the elderly or disabled, or it was more than color, like how people felt about, you know, different demographic of people. So I just really observed that, and I was like, okay, when work comes back, I'm going to talk about these things. I'm going to talk about what I noticed during COVID time or how people behaved. And it turned into a nice little 20 minutes worth of material talking about that period.
Yeah, well, a lot of material was gained. That's the positive during that time frame. It's like you had nothing but time to think about what was funny, what was weird, what was ridiculous. You're right. I mean, matter of fact, my material grew during that time period. My wife actually was doing the mask selling as well for a while.
Yeah. It was lucrative for about a month.
Yeah. It was hot. The sales were hot for a minute. You were talking about demographics though, and I'm wondering, are you comfortable in front of pretty much any demographic?
Yes.
Okay.
I've performed in young, old, black, white, poor, rich, Spanish, non-Hispanic, every box on the piece of paper. Other, I made others laugh. Everybody.
Yeah. I think that's one of the other parts of the maturation process for a comedian is that, because there are comedians and really good ones, black, white, whatever, that won't perform in front of the other demographic.
Right. They're uncomfortable in front of the other demographic. I've seen it.
Yeah, and you're not going to break through that way. Brian Regan, who I don't know, I'm sure you're familiar with Brian Regan. Brian Regan,
I'm a big fan of Brian.
Brian Regan made a comment that, you know, when he was coming up, that there was a club he used to perform in every night. And there were certain nights when his fellow comedians would not perform. They would say, no, I can't, that's not my audience. And he was like, what do you mean that's not your audience? Are you trying to be funny or what?
Right. They're people. So you have to look at them as people first, not a specific audience. And if you look at them as people, even if you don't hook them day one, if you continue on that course, that's how you write.
Yeah.
Eventually they're gonna get it that you didn't write this to a white man, or this joke is to a black guy, or this joke is to a black. It's about people.
That's it. 100%. And when you rob yourself of that opportunity, you're not gonna get to the next level. You're not gonna get there. That's why Brian Regan Brian Regan does not care who's out there, dude. He's Brian Regan wherever he goes, and
his audiences love him. I mean, I remember when Brian was in comedy clubs. Now he's theaters only.
I think Brian Regan can go in front of he can go to the Apollo and kill.
If it's his audience, and he's earned that. When you get to where you announce you're gonna be somewhere, the theater holds 1,100 people, and it's sold out. but there's no surprise. Nobody get there and go, oh, I didn't know who this Brian Regan fellow was. No, you came to see him. So there's no one tricked you.
Yes.
100 people came.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Dude, I'm shocked you've been doing this for 20 years. Let me ask you, do you still do open mics?
No, not really. I mean, I'll do them, but I'm on stage so much that I don't have to. I could try, and that's lucky, I guess, because when I was doing open mic, you're doing them because you're trying to get stage time. So you're trying to go up 3-4 times a week, but I'm on stage 3-4 times a week. So if I want to try something, a new 2-3 minutes, I could slide it into one of my shows somewhere there and try it out.
Yeah, I think the time that we're living in right now is very difficult for comedians to a certain extent when you think about the cancel culture. I don't know if you're familiar with Donnie Stopa or not. He's a fellow comedian friend of mine. He goes by Donnie the Entertainer Stopa. Are you familiar with Donnie?
No, what happened to Donnie? I don't know Donnie's story.
So Donnie did a documentary about comedy versus the cancel culture. And he's talking with a couple of different platforms right now, doing contract negotiations, whatever, to get it on a platform. But I'm going to play the trailer, and then I want to come back and get your take on it, because it talks about what comedians are dealing with right now on stage. I'm going to play it. We'll come back and talk about it.
We're talking about censorship in comedy. Do you think that cancel culture exists in comedy?
Basically, in a nutshell.
Definitely feel like, as bizarre as it sounds, like there's a war on jokes right now.
Cancel culture, it's such a misdirected umbrella term. You can't police what is subjective.
Oh, wow! Like, you kind of have to live your life bulletproof now. You just have to.
Greatest night in the history of television.
You can't say an inappropriate joke that doesn't have the right context.
There's always going to be some sliver of cancel culture, of woke, of political correctness.
You're not funny, and this is how you have to do the joke, because I know how funny jokes work. That's not the joke.
I don't believe people get canceled. I believe that they have a shift in their audience.
Put your hands together for Mr. Joe Rogan!
When people say somebody is canceled, I think it just means, oh, we found they did or said something that most people don't like.
I date a lot of bimbos. That's the problem, man.
So what?
So let's think about that joke in today's culture.
Let's think about that joke in today's culture, Drew. And my question for you is, what do you think of the public perception of stand-up comedy in 2024?
Man, it's crazy, because sometimes people just go off trigger words. They don't listen to the entire joke, or they take part out of context. They hear, I just heard this part, and that's a trigger word, and they go off. And some people don't even have a sense of humor. They don't even understand jokes or how a joke works. Now, yes, you can go too far. There's topics I won't touch. Like I don't really touch politics. I don't joke about rape. I don't, joke about, sexual assault. Those things aren't funny to people, especially people who are victims of those things. So those things to me, are topics that I don't, but in terms of sometimes, like, it's just a joke.
Yeah. And it makes you wonder why you went to a comedy club.
Right. Why did you come here?
I mean, that's I'll tell you, a guy that will talk about anything is Corey Holcomb. Corey Holcomb he's unreal. Corey, and there are not a lot of people that can handle Corey, and I get it, but at the end of the day, the guy's joking.
But he jokes about real things. He jokes about real things in the Black community, broken homes. that's his thing, and he does it well.
He does it
Corey
very
will talk about, I got 2 5-year-olds, but they not twins.
Yes.
That's somebody's truth.
That dude, you hit that right on the head. He's telling the truth of the ghetto.
Yeah.
He's telling the truth. So at the end of the day, he's making light of tragic, horrific, sad, depriving situations.
Right.
And he's making it funny. But the thing is, and I said all that to get to my initial point, when you walk into a comedy club, understand these are just jokes, or just don't go.
Not only that,
go in there.
they're the point of view of said comedian. So now people are gonna, after a Corey Holcomb show, now the comments, this guy is making fun of a marginal group of single moms with multiple kids. He didn't give all these people these kids. So how is it, let's burn Corey at the cross because he made fun of this single mom having 4 baby daddies? That's her truth.
That's her truth. And as you saw on the documentary trailer, Will Smith slapping Chris Rock, which I think kind of opened the door for more rebellion at clubs. At least it spiked for a minute, and then it kind of went back to normal. But what were your impressions of that incident at the Oscars a couple of years ago?
No self-control. You gotta have self-control in those type of environments. That's one of the biggest stages that we could be on as Black people.
Yeah.
So if nowhere else, there you gotta have self-control. I'm not saying he couldn't have stepped to him, but he could have did it at the Oscar after party.
Sure, 100%.
Or the 24-hour in and out that the celebrities go to, wherever that is.
Wherever that is, yes.
But not on TV, man.
Yeah. And I think that Chris Rock.
That's where he lost me, was that you made that. So you have no self-control, because that was on television.
It was on television. It may have actually ruined his career. I think Will Smith is so good that won't happen. Some people feel like it did ruin his career. But that being said, that's what comedians are dealing with, I think, in general. It's so easy to offend people in general today. And you, like you were saying before, you try to watch certain topics because it may set somebody off. But I just think it's kind of bad when you have to. I think you should be able to like address any subject matter. And I just think
how you do it is what matters. Do you do it in what light? Did you do it tastefully? But you could address anything. I choose not to talk about certain things, but any topic is subject to be joked about.
Let me ask you this, Drew. What is the biggest challenge that you've ever taken as a comedian in performing on a stage or level that you've never performed on before, and how did it go?
I got to say, when I went out on tour with Rodney Carrington, I mean, you're going from comedy clubs, 150, 200 people, to now this guy performs in arenas and casinos and theaters. So the first gig with him, I fly in on a private jet, his private jet. I flew to Tulsa. I get on, we're supposed to go to Dallas to pick him up. His dad was ill at the time. So pick him up, and we fly on to Dodge City, Kansas was the first show.
Okay.
Middle of nowhere. So the plane is landing. I don't see nothing. I don't see no houses or nothing, just farmland. We land in the middle of nowhere, go to this hockey arena.
Yeah.
And they're like, we're late. And they're like, they're introducing you. And I'm like, what? And the guy walks me to the stage, and I walk out to 3,000 people. And that was incredible. Because there's no opener, there's no host, it's just a 2-man show.
Yeah.
So they have this recorded intro for you, and boom, you're out there. I'm staring at 3,000 people.
Amazing. What was it like, dude?
Man, it was awesome. I just went ahead and did what I did my 20 minutes, and it was incredible.
Yeah. That's quite an honor that you were asked to do that. It just says a lot about your comedy game, man. But to just step into that arena. So that leads me to my next question, because I think there's a fine line between taking on a challenge and then taking on a gig or a challenge you're just not ready for. What's the fine line in your opinion for that?
That sometimes can be the same gig where you take on a gig that you're not ready for.
Yeah.
And but I think the gig shouldn't suffer. The gig shouldn't hurt because of you. So meaning, don't take the headliner spot if you know you're not ready for that gig. You shouldn't be a detriment to the gig. Maybe a guest spot or the feature position, we could still cut your time down. I don't even think that person should be the host, because I think the host should be a seasoned comic also.
Yes, of course, absolutely.
You can pay the host more, and the host can be a headliner in his own right or experience, but have that personality to host. So I think the host should have experience. But if you're talking about taking on a gig that you're not ready for, or the opportunity or the event is just bigger than what you're ready for, then don't. Everybody wants the headline. You have people who they've been featuring for so long, 5 years, and they go, man, I got this down, but nobody wants to be a good feature. Everybody wants to be the headline.
Yeah.
And it's okay sometimes to be a good feature. I was a good feature for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Stay there, and it doesn't mean because you have 30 minutes, oh, I could headline now. A lot of people think headlining is 15 more minutes, but it's not. It's pacing to when the check drop, or noticing if I need to go longer because the kitchen is running behind, or I can't go into this last section right now because if I do that, then that's my last 10 minutes and I see that they haven't served dessert yet. So there's a lot that goes. It's not just 15 more minutes. That's a different skill set right there.
Yeah, 100%.
Don't be a detriment to the show, I would say. If you don't take on the role or take the position, and there's going to be a big opportunity for you, and it actually could set you back.
It could set you back. I had a friend
that could set you back a couple years because you just weren't ready for what you bit off.
And it's a fine line too, because
because the comedy ego is incredible.
Yeah. And you want to get better. I think you should challenge yourself. I think there are times where you need to take a bite of an apple where you may or may not be ready for. But I saw an interview with the comedian. I wish I could remember his name, but he made the comment that you have to pay the comedy game the respect it's due, meaning you got to do your writing. You got to do your open mics. You got to do that feature spot that you don't want to do. And you may have to do it longer than you care to do. Right. There's steps to this. And so once you get to that headlining position, I mean, that's not a game right there.
No.
I mean, you really need to know how to do the things you just described about, I need to stretch this another 10 minutes because I don't think that I can end this right now, or another 20 minutes pace. How do I stall and buy time or whatever? Only a pro can do that. I mean,
because every different situation and scenario is gonna happen.
Yeah.
The kitchen ran out of wings, so they didn't bring the wings till you went on stage after the host and the feature. So now they're behind, or 2 waitresses didn't come in, so they were understaffed. So now you're part of this. You're part of this problem. It's not just the comedy club situation, because you're part of the show. So in that environment where you work in a comedy club, that's for you to now, okay, well, I need to do an hour, so I need to pace myself, or I need to throw in this chunk I normally don't do, or I'm going to get the other 10 minutes from the crowd, but where am I going to put it, in the beginning and the end? All of this stuff is going through your head because the club said, get off the stage at 9:30.
Yeah. And I've done the host part. I've done it a number of times. And you know what? Sometimes I know I've felt completely spent at the end of the night because you're on that stage so often and you have to keep it moving and all those different things. Start the show, in between each comic, at the end of the show, you're up there. And sometimes you're doing more work than anybody, even a headliner. So that's not a light spot to take either.
I remember those, especially at clubs that do 3 shows on a Saturday night.
Yeah.
So you're there from first show is 7. The host, you probably get there 6:30, 6 o'clock if you're responsible. And you're there all night till the 3rd show. Now that show's starting at 11, but you still have to bring up the feature and bring up the headliner and close the show out at the end of the night.
Yeah. And I think that you have to, again, take some challenges. I took a show, 45-minute set, the first time I'd ever done 45 minutes. And I was like, man, I'm going to do it. I'm going to challenge. I'm going to take it. And it was a show in Baltimore. And I had my wife with cue cards sitting in the front so I could look at her. Every joke, she would switch the cue cards so I could stay on task. But you know what, though, Drew? I never even looked at her, man. I had that thing down. I was worried, but you know what got me through is preparation. Like, I did all my open mics. I did all my showcases. I did all my writing every day. And I didn't even realize how ready I was for it. Like I didn't need those cue cards. I had the thing. So there are times when you need to challenge yourself, but again, you need to know if it's challengeable. Because I had a buddy go out to Las Vegas to do a headlining spot, wasn't near ready, fell flat on his face, Drew. To your point.
But he took the gig. His ego made him take the gig.
Now your name's mud. Like you said, take 2-3 years to get over that. You know, so you got to know that. But I just think I love asking that question because it is a fine line. Like, when do I challenge myself? When did I take that bite that maybe I need to go find out? You know what I mean? But you also need to know that that's way out of your league. Don't even think about it. So, and you were talking about that experience at the hockey arena. And I was wondering about your nerves and having butterflies. How do you deal with that when you're about to perform and you really, do you have a method, a process of calming down, Drew? So, ladies and gentlemen, we are talking with comedian Drew Thomas, and I think that we've lost his feed. Stand by.
Old school way, deep breaths. I mean, some people, I've seen all type of methods, man, but really I just start taking deep breaths before I go on, and just try to center yourself. Try to put yourself right where you are in the moment, in that building. Remember what it is that you're going out there to do. You know, don't be distracted. Don't make it about you.
Yeah.
It's always about the people who come to the show. These people paid to come to laugh their problems away. A lot of comics go out there and make it about them, but just take those moments. You know, I started taking deep breaths down, remembering where I am, thankful for the journey, how you got here, the people that came tonight that paid to come out there, and just go out there and as long as you keep those things in mind and don't be all over the place. The minute you let in, did I leave the iron on or did I leave that food out the refrigerator, you've lost.
Yes, it's a great point. That is a great point. One of the things that I try not to do when I get to the venue is start going over jokes in my mind. I try to be so prepared by the time I get there that I don't have to do that. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that kind of maintenance. And you may do it I may do it from time to time, but I try to avoid it. So I don't want to think about what I'm going to say. I'm here. If I've got to do that, I'm going to get nervous.
Right. Even to this day, I'll go to a venue and they, you know, for their technical purposes, and they go, oh, can you tell us what you're going to start with or how you end your show? And I'll go, I don't know. It's a visual. When I take my hat off, the show starts. And when I put my hat on, it ends. I don't know what that joke is going to be because I don't try to think about it like that.
Yeah. And there's so many things that I have a friend of mine that he's a type of guy where He's hilarious. But before he gets on stage, like 10, 15 minutes, there's this invisible wall around him that tells you, do not get in that space.
I dig it. Some people are like that. I kind of have it sort of, but not to that extent. But I've seen it. Some people just zone out. I was on a cruise one time, and I'm in that space getting ready to go on, and it's two comedians. I'm first, so the cruise director comes backstage, and he wants to catch up and talk, like, oh, is everything okay, the ship, or about the performance? So I'm listening to him, but I don't really hear him because the guy out there is introducing me. So I come back off stage, and the other comic says, what did you say to the cruise director? I said, I didn't say anything to him. I was preparing to go out on stage. Well, he said that you don't want to be here. Your attitude says that you don't want to be here. And I'm like, well, the man tried to talk to me before I went on stage. That's on him.
There's a lot of things people don't understand.
They don't understand. So I don't know how he took that as, I don't want to be here because I didn't want to chit chat with you 2 seconds before I go out on stage.
There's a huge amount of ignorance for the general public when it comes to comedians. Like a huge amount of ignorance.
I'm going to give you one that you can use in your act. I'm going to give you one. You could put this in your... No, I can't. You heard this joke from your dentist.
Yes. And Drew, and there's a reason why I have an act and you don't. There's a reason. Sit down. So let me ask you this, dude. When it comes to stand-up comedy, one of the unavoidable realities for any comedian, I don't care if it's Eddie Murphy, Richard Pryor, Steve Martin, all the greats, Dave Chappelle, is bombing. And so it's part of the fabric of becoming good. What's your process and your deal if and when it's happened to you? Are you one of those type people, Drew, that can just like brush it off, or does it take you a day or two to get over?
I used to. So in 20 years, things have changed. In the beginning, maybe the first 8 years, it would linger on for days. I messed the joke up, I flubbed that line, or I didn't connect with the audience last night, and I would go over it and over it and over it and beat myself up. And at some point, I made the decision to leave it in that day. That performance stays in. Now, I might not go to bed early because I have to run the show back through my head and process it and go through what I did wrong and right and where it was on me, and I fix it right then. So whether it's a there or a then or whatever the case, oh, I should have said there, but I said then. Okay, I'm gonna fix that tomorrow night. So whether it's 2 or 3 in the morning, that's it. Once I go to bed that night, you can't even ask me about that show in the morning. If we were together on the road and we went to breakfast and you said, man, you bombed last night, I don't know what you're talking about. That was yesterday. You should have had that conversation with me last night.
Yeah, I love it. I think you do have to leave it in the past. And another thing too, if you're honest with yourself, if you go back and look at what happened, it's like, well, there were some things that made that happen that I could have prevented.
Every time. Now, it could have been a bad audience. It could have been a bad venue set up where you had the banquet tables with the dance floor and all type of elements that don't go to comedy. But all those things aside, now you have to be honest and go, was that the right opening joke? I lost them with the opening joke. I never got them back. I didn't address the lady in the pink dress. You know, there's all type of things when you play back. How could I not address that? How could I ignored the bottle that broke. You think back on it and it's a lot of things you did that went into that bombing.
And I also think too, you mentioned about the banquet, the setup or the food or whatever.
Oh, that's the worst.
Hey,
that's the worst setup in comedy history.
Sometimes you just got to say, no, I'm not taking the gig.
I'm not doing it. I've made them change it where you either have to bring the chairs up or I need a cordless mic where I can go to where the tables are. But you've been doing it long enough that you know what works and doesn't work. And there's no need to do it just because there's money. You know, if somebody was to, oh, there's a gig, it's $5,000 and it's banquet tables with the dancing chair. No.
And that and that and that comes with the ignorance also from the general public of not knowing how to produce a show. Like, you're asking me to come perform, but you don't know how to set this thing up. You don't have people eating while I'm performing. You don't have people. Now I'm fighting with the fried chicken.
And I got forks clinking in my ear and knives, and these people are at conversation. So for every table, round table, there's 10 of the people with their back to you.
Yeah. So that can also make you go, I bombed because I set myself up to fail. I should have said no.
I should have said no.
Another part of it is dealing with people, and I'd love to hear your response to this one, when you have hecklers in the crowd. How do you deal with hecklers?
It depends on the heckler. Now, you got some people that they want attention. They all want attention. So these are the people that I'm going to make this evening about me.
Yeah.
So some people, they're not even smart enough to heckle. You could make them fodder for jokes or put them into the show. And then there's some people that they're rude. They're heckling for a different reason, and those people have to go. There's no negotiating around that. I'm going to say something 1 or 2 times. Hey, I don't know what's going on over there. Maybe you want to step outside. If what you got going on is more important than this, feel free to leave. There's no hard feelings, but you're not going to keep interrupting the show and interrupting the experience for everyone else.
So you'll have security come out and escort them?
They got to go.
Yeah.
Tap you on the shoulder 2 times. You got to, I'm not going to, because now you're going to go back and forth with this person for an hour.
Yeah. I saw one comedian, Drew, address a table that was doing exactly what you described. They were having their own little party.
Right.
This comedian destroyed these folks. And I mean, it was great. I mean, he totally humiliated these people. Now, there are comedians that take pride in frying hecklers, and they're prolific. And hey, God bless you. Hats off to you. But also there comes a time to, Drew, where it's like, you know what? I'm not going to waste my time deconstructing you. Just escort these people out. Because you didn't come there for that. You have a routine you want to get out. You want to do Drew Thomas, and it's not about you folks today.
And the people around them. Yeah, I've had situations where this was years ago in Tallahassee, and these people late show Saturday night, and this club, they're having a ball. I mean, they're with me, joke for joke. We're having a good time. This table in the back is doing their own thing. You know, they should have went to Applebee's instead. So I try to ignore it for a while. I ignore it till it starts to bother me, where it's a buzzing in your ear, or now I'm distracted. Now I'm not 3 jokes ahead. I'm joke per joke now because I can't concentrate. So finally I said something. I was like, hey man, you know, what's going on back there? I'd gladly offer to pay the tab for you guys if you'll just leave. And the audience member in the back stood up and said, no, Drew, we'll pay the ticket.
Whoa. So
they can leave. And we paused the show. They took care of their check, put them out. I turned to the lady in the front and I said, where was I? She told me the word that I was on, and we picked right back up right there and continued the show.
I love it. I love it. You were doing your thing, bro. I saw Richard Pryor in 1972 do a show at UC Santa Barbara.
Wow.
This is when Richard Pryor became really Richard Pryor, the one that we knew and loved. Richard Pryor was killing. And he would stop every now and then, maybe get a sip of water.
Mm-hmm.
So it's probably like a 10-second spell of just nothing going. He wasn't talking. And there were people in the back of this auditorium that were heckling him, right? And I'm thinking to myself, man, you don't think of Richard Pryor getting heckled. Long story short, he completely ignored them. He might have addressed them a couple of times. But as far as he was concerned, they didn't mean anything to him.
Right.
I mean, they would just, and then they eventually shut up because he just wasn't even concerned about it. So I just thought that was interesting. Like, wow.
I have all type of methods. I'll do that. Sometimes I'll turn my back on them. Like I'll actually position my body where I'm ignoring this person.
Yeah.
To where, so it depends on the type of person. Like I said, there's different type of hecklers. It depends on what the mental state is that caused the heckling. So there's people who just want attention. So by not giving them attention, you can shut them up because they're not getting it. If you engage with them and give them attention, you've opened up a can of worms. Then there's other people that something else is on their mind, something else is on their heart that has nothing to do with us at the show or anything to do with anything I said. That person just needs to go.
Yes. Hey, Drew, I love it, man. And there are other comedians I've spoken with that do the exact same thing. They just have security come out and escort them out.
That's why I love performing in Vegas. You're going to get one warning. The minute I say from the stage, hey, that lady needs a glass of water, you're out of here. They're not, the people pay too much money to have you sit there and act a fool.
I totally love it. I think that's exactly the move that you got to make. Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to the Maurice Brown Comedy Show on Bog Radio. We're talking with comedian Drew Thomas. And this has been a great convo, Drew. You're going to be at Brad Garrett's Comedy Club in Las Vegas this summer, August 5th through 11. And I think that folks, that you can get your tickets for this show. And I highly advise you to, if you're going to be in that area, that general area. Like I said, I'm in Austin, Texas. I mean, you can get up to Las Vegas. But you got to check out Drew Thomas at Brad Garrett's Comedy Club, August 5th through 11th. Before we get out of here, I want to ask you, do you have any advice for young people out there, Drew, that are young to the comedy game and they've made their minds up, hey, you know what, I want to be a stand-up comedian straight up. That's what I want to do with my life. What advice can you share with that young comedian?
These are for the ones that's listening. For the ones that don't want to listen, move on. Then I'm not for you. But if you're listening and this is what you want to do, one, you're gonna need a support group. This is a tough thing to do by yourself. And by support group, I mean either somebody that's willing to help you with your t-shirts or just ride with you to your gigs or be honest with you about your set. But you need some type of team, you know, to put your social media together. The young people are better at social media than older folks, but still, that's important. You know, your presence online. 2, study the past, study the greats, study the people that's, a lot of the young people, they see the new people, they see the internet people or the people that popped off and they think, okay, I'm just going to do the same thing and it's going to work for me. But everybody on the internet haven't popped off. You know, it's lightning in the bottle for the people that have popped off that way. So it's work for them, it's work for them. Nothing wrong with it. That's just the times we're in.
Yeah.
Study the past. Go back and watch Eddie Murphy and Richard Pryor and Robin Harris and people that have passed away and people that you just don't know nothing about them. You know, I remember being at Kennesaw in 2003, going back to school. I'm early 30s. And the college age kids will come into me and were like, have you heard about this Dave Chappelle guy? When Chappelle's show was out. And I'm like, this guy's had 3 specials on HBO. What are you talking about? Have I heard? You just heard about it. So go back. Watch people that's come up before you. Watch different styles. Don't just get caught up in, oh, I'm black, so I'm going to study everybody that's been on Comic View. No, watch George Carlin, you know?
George Carlin, great example.
Watch other people, watch different, Lenny Bruce, watch other styles. Bob Newhart, go back, listen to Red Fox, Bill Cosby.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, it's interesting, you mentioned Dave Chappelle. We're going to get out of here on this, but because what always bothered me about that period when he was blowing up from the TV show, it's like You know, Dave Chappelle didn't just pop up out of nowhere. You just found out about him. You really don't even know anything about Dave Chappelle.
And they were like this new. I remember the kids saying, "Man, because the Chappelle show hit with them, with that age group, 18, 19, 20-year-olds." So they're like, "Oh man, you saw." So to them, it was like In Living Color when it first came out, or SNL in the 80s, where they were like, "Did you see last week's episode?" He said, "Man, you heard about this comedian?" And I'm like, "Heard about him." And it was amazing to me because I've known about Dave since he was on Star Search. That might have been 84.
Yeah.
Or sometime back then when he did it. Maybe 86, 88, somewhere around there.
And that is a whole other conversation I could get in, but I won't now. Certainly not enough time. But I love the fact that you mentioned it, because Dave Chappelle is like, I think in this generation right now, he's the guy and he's earned it. But we got to get out of here.
He's earned. And another thing to young people, stay on stage. They want to skip the stage part. So have a team around you. Stay on stage. Engage with your audience. They have the ability to build their fan base before they even get on stage.
I love it. Great advice, Drew. Great advice. I want to thank you for being on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning to you. Thank you for having a cup of coffee and hanging out with me and Drew this morning and talking all things.
Thanks for having me. This was a great conversation.
Hey, man, I love talking to great comedians, and that's what you are. That's why I invited you on. I mean, you're hilarious, dude. And folks, go to Drybar Comedy, type in Drew Thomas. Watch the entire special.
Watch the entire special. Everybody has watched the clips. Watch the entire special. It's as good as any other 30-minute special out there, I'd say. I mean, I don't have to say it's better than this one or that one, but it's pretty good.
It's very good. So, folks, if you get a chance to do that, please do. You'll enjoy it. I want to give a shout out also to RadioQDX.com out of Lucama, North Carolina, and KCHF TV out of Albuquerque, New Mexico. You're listening to the Maurice Brown and watching the Maurice Brown Comedy Show. We're talking with comedian Drew Thomas. Drew, once again, thank you for being on the show, sir, and may the peace of Christ be with you and your family. God bless you.
Thanks for having me.
Amen. Amen.